So this is my third visit to Bowie. And of course, I'll be at your sister institution, Morgan State, later this month on the 22nd. So mark your calendars for that, Morgan State University. And I'll be in Norfolk State. For those of you who have friends and family in the Virginia area, I'll be at Norfolk State University this coming Monday the 6th. And that'll be my first time at Norfolk and my first time at Morgan, but not my first time at Bowie. Today is the first day of the 2017 Black History Month year. And as a people, there is a lot that we have to reflect upon. This marks our 398th year in America under the authority of the 13 colonies. 398 years. On August the 21st of 2019, that will mark our 400 years of sojourn in these United States. And the irony of this for me is that although we've been here for 4 centuries, we still don't understand racism and how it operates. After 4 centuries, African people are still ignorant as to how to navigate effectively in these United States. We've been through a lot, brothers and sisters. We've been through slavery. We've been through Reconstruction, which was basically a process of rebuilding America after the Civil War to guarantee that black folks would never be in a position that would render white privilege useless. Let me say that again. The purpose of Reconstruction was to rebuild America following the Civil War to ensure that black people would never be in a position to render white privilege useless. I'm going to come back to that. And then we had to go through, or we went through, the great Marcus Garvey movement. And then we came on down to the pre-Jim Crow struggles and the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights era, the Black Power era, the Black Panther era. And now you're in this. In fact, if you look at our history since 1865, since the 13th Amendment, and I need you to be absolutely clear that Abraham Lincoln freed nobody. You got to be clear about this now. When the 13th Amendment was issued, the preliminary as well as the official, it only authorized the freeing of slaves in states that had rebelled. In other words, the only people Abraham Lincoln freed were those who belonged to a Confederate government that had already seceded from the Union. How can you free slaves over which you have no control? And we want to be careful when we refer to our ancestors who did suffer through the Great Ma'afa. We should not refer to them as slaves, but as enslaved people. And there's a difference. When you say slave, it sets up a psychological pathway that suggests we were created to serve another people. So it's important that you say enslaved, so that lets people know something was done to them outside of what they were already doing for themselves. So you weren't born a slave. People took doctors and lawyers and mothers and fathers and chiefs, queens, and reduced them to servitude. Enslaved Africans, not slaves. But be that as it may, brothers and sisters, we've been through so much. If you look at, well, getting back to that point really quickly, we were never supposed to be in the Civil War. We were never supposed to still be in America right now. And this is relevant because we're dealing with the whole Donald Trump, post-Obama thing, which I'm going to talk about. But the reason why you keep on going through what you're going through, you are only still here by an accident of history. The Civil War. The Union was losing to the Confederacy. Abraham Lincoln did all he could to keep blacks out of the war, so they could not legitimate their struggle for freedom. But once the Confederacy had pushed so far up into the Union, and the Union's back was against the wall, he had no choice but to do what he did not want to do, and that is let black men join the Union cause. Once you joined the Union cause, you turned the tide of the war. The war ended within the next 2 years or so because of black participation. That's not my opinion. You should read some of the journals of whites who participated in the Civil War. You should read some of the journals of the generals and captains and lieutenants of the Union and Confederate Army. Read your history, and you will find that we're the reason America is still America. Had it not been for you, this would be two countries, a Confederacy and a Union. It was black folk who kept it one. True story. So once the war was won, you were armed, you were in a state of power. How could the government that enslaved you use you to beat its enemy because they were losing to the enemy, and then turn right around and say, thank you for your service, put the guns down, and put the chains back on? What do you think would have happened? We would have kept on fighting. In fact, in hindsight, I think we should have. I think someone within that whole Civil War population of black men should have said, you know what, gentlemen, we're not going to stop, because we cannot trust these good white folks in the North any more than we can trust these good white folks in the South. Let's keep on fighting that turnstile. And who knows, maybe there would be a black republic in America today. Which brings me to one of the premises of my talk. Decisions. Most of you are young folks studying in the university. Decisions in African culture. Decisions are the links to destiny. Make sure you choose wisely. What are you majoring in, and why are you majoring in? Are you choosing a major because you expect them to get paid, or are you choosing a major because that's what you want to do for the rest of your life? I hope none of you young folks are pursuing anything that does not interest you, but you do it for the money. Worst mistake you can make. Because as a psychotherapist, I can tell you that our couches are filled with lawyers, doctors, engineers, and other high-achieving professions. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but because they are high-achieving professions that come with a decent standard of living, many people major in them because they think that by earning the money that the career brings, it will also accompany happiness, and that is not the case. I got my doctorate at a college in Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, American Psychological Association program, one of the best on the East Coast. And we had to do our practicums in the Center for Brief Therapy. And we did our therapy with the medical students. And guess what the number one reason why med students were coming to therapy, at least the ones I saw? The number one reason the med students were coming to therapy is because they didn't want to be doctors. About to graduate in 2 months, make $250,000 a year, don't want to be doctors. I had a surgeon one time who'll probably be making about $400,000 a year. Why are you here? Because I don't want to do this. I had one of my white med students tell me, I don't even like the sight of blood. 3 months from graduation, I don't even like the sight of blood. Well, why are you here? Because my mother was a doctor, and so was my father, and so were my grandparents. And so it was expected of me to do this, and I can't take it any longer. I don't want to do this. But how do I tell my parents that I'm going to betray the family profession? And how do I also tell them that they just wasted $250,000 on a med school education that I don't care for? And our whole therapeutic relationship was trying to get him to a point where he could garner the courage and strength and willpower and resolve to tell his parents that I don't want to be a doctor. Bowie State University students, choose something you're going to love. I decided in 3rd grade I wanted to be a psychologist. I decided in the 3rd grade, 7, 8, 9, that I wanted to be a psychologist. I didn't know how much money psychologists made. I didn't know what the employment outlook was for psychologists. But I knew that young that I wanted to help children and adults who look like me put smiles on their faces, to help people work through their misery. Now, of course, when I got to Millersville University in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, I saw the opportunity for psychologists, but that's not why I chose it. I didn't know ADHD was coming. I didn't know that so many of you black parents will let white folks brainwash you into putting your child on dangerous meds. I had no idea that so many of you black parents would let white folks brainwash you into getting your child diagnosed with ADHDs and learning disabilities and mild mental retardations and emotional disturbances and conduct disorders that they do not have. I had no idea that when I came of age, that you black parents would allow people in school buildings to tell you that your children need medication to receive an education. I had no idea I would be fighting Concerta. I had no idea I would be fighting Ritalin. I had no idea I would be fighting Zoloft and Prozac and Paxil and Vyvanse and Strattera. I had no idea that the psychoacademic holocaust against black boys was real. I just wanted to help our children. But because black people are so crazy, it looks like I'll always have a job. And what is your number one mental illness? What separates the African American from every other population in this country? You are unique in a lot of different ways. Number one, you're the only population in America who does not have an in-group bias. Let me say it again. You're the only population in America. You're the only non-white minority, and you're the only culture, period, including white folks, who do not have an in-group bias. What do you mean by an in-group bias?
Unpack it.
I mean that if the Chinese is hungry because he has an in-group bias towards Chinese, he's likely to delay gratification to buy at your restaurant or the Jewish restaurant. He's going to wait until he's able to patronize a Chinese restaurant if there's another one in Baltimore. In-group bias. I'm loyal to mine. European Jews have an in-group bias. Arabs have an in-group bias. East Indians an in-group bias. Mexicans an in-group bias. You're the only people in America without an in-group bias. You are not partial to things black. In fact, you are anti-partial to things black. People talk about the self-hate of African people. The self-hate is the root. Nat Turner said, the self-hate is the branch. Nat Turner said we got to strike at the root. If self-hate is the branch and all your leaves grow from it, what is the root that the branch stands on? The root of your self-hatred is your inferiority complex. Let me say it again. Every problem we have in America can be traced back to your inferiority complex, and guess what? You cannot undo that inferiority complex with hotepping yourself out of it. Because that's another problem we got in the black community. We think if we go to Egypt, change our name, grease our face up in shea butter, burn some incense, get a veggie wrap, go to a couple conscience lectures and read 25 African books, that you're somehow free now. Wrong. Slavery was not an education. Slavery was an indoctrination. Let me say it again. Slavery was not an education. Slavery was an indoctrination. They didn't sit you down in a classroom with a book and say, read this to teach self-hate. That's education. Conscious mind stuff. Slavery was indoctrination. They put you through a daily ritual, 24 hours a day. Not just mind, but behavior and emotion. If they made a slave, they didn't learn you into one. This is why if we think educating black children, just teaching them about African history is going to free their minds, you're so wrong. There's white folks who know more about African history than we do. Knowledge itself does not seek to make a slave a slave. It is the internalization of that knowledge and the practical application of it that ceases to make a slave a slave. I can show you slave narratives where we had ancestors who knew everything there was to know about Kemet, ancestors who knew everything there was to know about the zodiac and African spiritual astrology. They were not ignorant, very knowledgeable, but they had no freedom. You can be a smart slave. The world knows black America is filled with a lot of them. And that's another decision you college students have to make. Every last one of you got a decision to make. Every last one of you. And what is that decision that every black college student has to make? You have to decide whether or not you're going to use your education to serve black folks, or are you going to use your education to misserve black folks? Are you going to be another black bourgeoisie? Some of you are. Without question. You are at Bowie because you want to get your paperwork so you can get drafted by white power. That's right. Why was Barack Obama so popular amongst black folks, although he did nothing for black folks? The reason President Obama was so successful, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact. You can't name one law, one executive order, one program that he financed that was for black folks. Not a single one in 8 years. But the reason Barack Obama is so successful amongst black folks, so popular, is because he was drafted by white folks, which is your life goal. What greater symbol of acceptance by oppressor than to become its president? That's what you want to do. You don't want to build no black schools. Nah. Black bank, no. Independent black community, never. Black Wall Street, get away from me. Some of you brothers, a black wife, never. I want to be accepted by my oppressor. And that's why integration is a mental illness, because it can never happen.
Yes, it is.
It's an illness. And we're the only people in America who practice integration. Have you noticed that? Who practices integration in America except black folks? You're the only colorblind people on the planet. Go up to a Chinese, I'm Chinese. Latino, I'm Latino. Arab, I'm Arab. East Indian, East Indian. European Jew, I'm a Jew. Go up to a black person, I'm a child of God. You have no racial, ethical point of departure. It's all mysticism. That's your whole identity, mysticism. And you want no cultural consciousness because you don't think black people can do anything about their reality. I'm talking to you like this because we're now in our fourth 50-year period since the end of slavery. Let's walk through them real quick. The first 50-year period since the end of slavery was 1865 to the start of the Marcus Garvey movement. From 1865 until 1915, Garvey started the UNIA in 1914. But 1915 is the 50-year period. And then from the Garvey movement until the high tide of the Civil Rights Movement, which is the Civil Rights Bill and the Voting Rights Act, so 1915 to 1965. So from Garvey to King is another 50-year period since slavery. So you got the end of slavery to Garvey is the first period. Garvey to Dr. King is your second period. Dr. King until 2015. Let's talk about that period, because that's the one that needs to be studied. Period in which most of you and myself, most of us were born in that period. See, we've had four great struggles in the black American reality. Our first struggle was for what? Humanity. Some of y'all forget this. There was no fight against slavery until after there was a fight for black people to realize their humanity. Some of you guys forget that before we could fight to be free, we had to fight to prove that we were people. Let me say that again. And I got to say this because some of you are multiculturalists. Some of you want to equate the black struggle with everybody else's struggle in America, but there's only one problem with that. They're all immigrants. Your ancestors were imports. I beg to differ. They are all immigrants. Your ancestors were imports. It was not illegal for them to get an education. Their unhumanity was not codified by law. Nobody owned their ancestors perpetually. This is what makes the African slavery different from anybody else's oppression. That's right. You're the only people who ever was victims of oppression who inhumanity was codified by law. The law said that you were things and not people. For 200 years, we had to fight to prove that we were people. And then after that, we had to fight for our freedom. So first it was a fight for humanity, then it was a fight for liberty, and then there was a fight for what? Equality. And now we're in our fourth stage. 1965 to 2015 is the third stage, which was what? A fight for survival. And now we at the start of our new one. 2015 to 2065. 2015 until our bicentennial of freedom. That's the period y'all in. I want to know what y'all want to do with it. Because all I see is a bunch of tweeters and texters and dancers and athletes, colorblind young folks with no interest in saving their community whatsoever, failing to realize that you will never be respected by any self-respecting group for ignoring your group. People say, wow, folks got so much contempt for black folks. Well, how could they not? You get an education and you run away from your people. You cannot respect that when you love your people. See, one of the reasons we don't get sympathy is because we're the only African population on earth who can solve its own problems without outside intervention. Let me say it again. How do you feel sorry for people that have $1 trillion economy? The richest group of blacks on the face of the earth, the only group of blacks who can solve their own problems with their own money. But you'd rather spend it on Louis Vuitton, big trucks, rims, weave. You don't want to use your money to empower your community. You just want to have fun with it. How much it costs to start a credit union? $250,000 to start a credit union. Why we don't have at least a couple in every black community? $250,000 to start a credit union. How do you build a community without any infrastructure? And the only way you're going to get infrastructure is if people in the community have access to wealth. How much it costs to start a small bank? $1 million to start a small bank. I wonder which young person in here is going to be the first to start a black bank in this century for us, by young folks. Imagine a black bank staffed by all young folks, committed to building and revitalizing black inner city institutions. You don't want to spend $250,000 on a credit union. You don't want to spend $1 million on a bank, but you spent $600 million on McDonald's last year. How many Big Macs can you buy? How many milkshakes can you possibly consume? Black America spent $600 million on McDonald's. Sisters, how much did you spend on your hair bill? You ready for this number? Black women spent $9 billion on weave and perm this year. But let me say this to my sisters. I don't blame you for your insecurity surrounding your beauty. I blame us, the black male. And the reason I blame us, the black male, because you're only trying to look like what you think we find attractive. And if we value traditional African phenotype, you would not have to spend $9 billion on trying to look more European. Brothers, if we want our sisters to go natural, we can make them go natural just by changing our tastes. So although they do bear responsibility for it, we bear a significant amount of that responsibility. I mean, after all, an educated black man is more likely to marry outside of his race than the men of every other color put together in this country. And you want me to believe it's simply because of love. You can't help who you fall in love with. No, you have low self-esteem. And you feel that by having someone else's daughter bear your children, not only will your children look better than you, but it also makes you feel equal to the white man. And there's a book you can read on that topic by Franz Fanon, who was married to a white woman, one of our greatest revolutionaries and psychiatrists. And the name of the book was called Black Skin, White Mass. Please read it. Please read Black Skin, White Mass, where he analyzes the psychology of black men's unique attraction to things lighter than his mother. These are the facts of the case, and they are undisputed. Look at you. Oh my God, he said that. Yes, I said that. I'm not scared to be hurt. I tell the truth. I don't work for white folks. I work for myself, so I can say what I want to say. And that's important, though. No, that's very important, because one of the reasons we as a people cannot stand up and speak out about things that are relevant to us is because we work for others. This is why all you young people, I don't care what your major is, education, engineering, medicine, law, social work, psychology, whatever your major is, do me a favor, do your ancestors a favor, and do our community a favor. Don't settle for a job. Make it a business. You majoring in education? I hope you don't settle for being superintendent of Baltimore schools. That's not enough for us. I need you to be superintendent of an independent African school system. You become a doctor, licensed medical doctor. Don't settle for being chief of medicine at Johns Hopkins. I need you to be chief of medicine at the independent African hospital that you're going to build. You're going to be a business major? Don't settle for being CEO of a Fortune 500. I want to see you as the owner of a black Fortune 500 company. I don't care how much money you make or how many degrees you have. As long as you serve other people, you still a servant. We need independence. Marcus Garvey said, God never intended us to be a race without a nation of our own. And we are not going to abuse God's confidence in us as men. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I'm a Garveyite. I'm a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist. You know, the guys with the red, black, and green flags. And what is a Pan-Africanist? A Pan-Africanist is one who first and foremost believes that all African people are members of the same human family. So whether you super light skin or super chocolate, we one family. Whether you speak American English or the Queen's English in London, one family. Whether you in Jamaica speaking Jamaican patois, or whether you in New Orleans speaking that version of English, we still one family. Whether you Muslim or Christian, whether you Alpha or Kappa, whether you Q or Sigma, whether you Zeta or AKA, whether you SG, Rho, or Delta. And Lord knows I love them Deltas. We are but one family. Whether you in Nigeria speaking Igbo or South Africa speaking Xhosa, whether you in Kenya with the Swahili or up in Ghana with the Asante, we are but one family. And as Pan-Africanists, we identify on the level of African family first. Nothing is more important than your racial identity. And why? Why is being black more important than being Christian? Why is being black more important than my fraternity? Why is being black more important than being a black bourgeoisie or a Mason? You know why it's more important? Because it's the only thing you belong to that God chose before you got here. Everything else is superficial. You can stop being Christian tomorrow. You can stop being Muslim next week. You can quit your frat next year. You can leave the Masonic Lodge in a couple of months, but you're African for the rest of your life. God fixed it so. It is your cultural, racial, psychological, and spiritual heritage. So nothing is more important than being an African. You're not a Christian who happens to be black. You're a black man who happens to be a Christian. You can give up the Christianity. You can't give up the blackness. What else do we believe as Pan-Africanists? We believe that what is to be done for African people is to be done by African people. So yes, it's true. In our organizations, there is no interracial membership. Because we hate white folks? No. Because we hate Arabs? No. East Indians? No. Mexicans? No. So why can't we have other members in our organization, Dr. Johnson? For three simple reasons. Reason number one, you have a white Jesus Savior complex. You've been raised on Sunday school teachers with a white Christ. Yes, most of you too. Probably have it in your dorm room. And when you grow up with a white Jesus Savior complex, then subconsciously you're always looking to who? White folks to bail you out of your own problems. When white folks join black organizations, we automatically become psychologically dependent without even being conscious of it for them to lead the way out. So that's why Mr. Garvey's time, and even now, for those of us who are still diehard Pan-Africanists, because a lot of us have grown weak through the years being influenced by the social pressures of the world, you could not join if you were not an African person. Because we don't need you having psychological dependence on other people to solve your problems. Do it yourself. The second reason is because you need to learn how to do things yourself. There's something to be earned spiritually for knowing you did it. People call me all the time, Dr. Johnson, I know some good white folks who want to donate to the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. What's up with this Garvey stuff? Take these donations, man. We got grants. Department of Education giving out grants. Criminal Justice Department giving out grants. Youth and Family Services out of D.C., they said they want to meet you. You can use your doctorate to get the school built. You ain't got to spend a penny, Dr. Johnson. But there's only one problem with that. Not only if I let white folks build my school, they will run it. But even if they did not want to run the school and just wanted to build it, how can I claim victory for something we didn't create? How do I run a school telling black boys that whatever you need, you can make yourself, but yet the school that they're learning at was made by someone else? We believe what is to be done for us must be done by us. Can't nobody be more interested in you than you. We also believe that whatever you pray to better look like you. If you don't give God an image, that's fine. You don't have to give God an image because supreme consciousness is spirit. Supreme consciousness is spirit. But since the beginning of time, humans have always sought to reduce to familiar symbols that which cannot be understood. So God is always represented in a human form, in a symbolic way, because that's what humans do, to make it more relative. So you ain't got to have a picture for your creator, but if you're going to pray to an image, it had better look like you. If you can't find God or divinity in yourself, how can you find it in anyone else? See, you got Jesus Christ, and then you got Jesus Caucasian. Which one are you praying to? Are you praying to Jesus Christ, or are you praying to Jesus Caucasian? What's the difference? Jesus Christ was born in a cave in Ethiopia. Jesus Caucasian was born in a manger in Bethlehem. Jesus Christ had blue, black, purple, African skin. Jesus Caucasian, looked like Michael Bowie. Which one are you praying to? You cannot pray to the God of Willie Lynch and be upset because your prayers don't get answered. Who prays to an image of a deity that resembles one's historical enemy? And you know where we get the Last Supper from. Leonardo da Vinci painted it. What was the date again? 1484? 1492? About 10 years before Columbus set sail for the New World. Leonardo da Vinci painted Jesus in the Last Supper at the request of the Pope. Every picture of Jesus before that had him as a blue, black, purple African. Not Obama color. I said purple. Because you want to cheat. And some of y'all do cheat. You go take your white Jesus down to the Christian bookstore, you go get a Cablinasian Tiger Woods Christ and hang that all night. I was speaking at a fundraiser for the Marcus Garvey School in Jamaica. They had a fundraiser in Fort Lauderdale about 2 years ago. And a brother told me that his church in Jamaica had a white Jesus. And you know, Jamaicans are richly melanated, beautifully black people. He went to his pastor and said, "Pastor, I got a new picture of Jesus we can hang up." He had an artist do it up, nice picture. Guess what the pastor told him? That picture will never hang in this church. This is our Jesus. That's right. That's right. You can't stand anything that look like you. I was hurt 2 weeks ago when I learned that Serena Williams was going to marry outside the community. Good God Almighty. I love me some Serena. Good God. Good God Almighty. Jesus. Is Serena marrying out of love or longing to be accepted? Let me tell y'all something. Don't you ever forget this to the day you die. Whether you're 20, 40, 60, 80, or 100. Conditions do not make you. Conditions do not make you. Conditions do not make you. They only reveal who you really were to yourself. Let me say it again. In other words, if you go working off in Hollywood and do something ridiculously embarrassing to your people, don't say, "Well, it was where I was." Like when I see black men who marry outside their race, "Doc, what you want me to do? I've been around white girls all my life." Well, so have I. I went to college with them. They had crushes on me, sent me all types of flowers and stuff. But if you're loyal to black women, you're loyal to black women. It's a question of priorities and principalities. And that's another thing about Pan-African is we don't marry outside of our race. In Garvey's day, you could not even join his organization if you were married with someone who was not an African. Not because we hate, but because we love ourselves. And black women, y'all need to get with it because some of y'all multicultural with the relationships, and what you fail to realize is you're least likely to be married in comparison to any other woman in America. I don't know if y'all know this. Only 1 out of every 4 black women gets married in this country. And you got the nerve to be multiculturalizing. And you the main one suffering from the multiculturalizing. I got 2 little girls. One day they got to get married. How am I gonna find them a husband if all the brothers then ran off with somebody else's daughter? Self-inflicted genocide. Lighting myself up generation by generation. What the kids say in school, they say, "Dr. Johnson, I want my kids to have pretty hair." They say that now. Who taught them second graders that their hair was ugly? You want to know who taught them? You did. Not the white folks. No. We like blaming the white. No, we do it. Black kids are taught racial inferiority at Sunday school with a white Jesus before they even go to kindergarten. You done already indoctrinated them with self-hate before they even went to kindergarten. Everybody's scared over Donald Trump. Donald Trump ain't going to do nothing that Obama didn't already do to you, which was ignore you with your permission. Y'all was happy 8 years ago, wasn't y'all? Obama. We have a black president. Black folks was passing out, catching the Holy Ghost, and I'm sitting there like, these Negroes are sick. You don't understand white supremacy. Y'all need to understand racism. Have you even studied slavery? Doesn't matter the color in charge. The face you see is irrelevant. Who makes the decisions? If Obama was going to do anything for black folks, he would have never got put in. He was a safe choice because he was not a descendant of enslaved Africans who had no biological, psychological connection to you. He came from a white mother. He was a safe choice. You'll never get a president who's a descendant of enslaved Africans because that contradicts the rules of white supremacy in America. You might get another black president, but he won't be a descendant of African slaves. And Negroes ran around for 8 years talking about some, leave him alone. You don't have to do nothing, just be black. That's what y'all said. Silly black folks. You ain't got enough for me, just be black. You know why he didn't have to do nothing for you, just be black? Because white folks accepted him. That's all you want is acceptance. What's half of us going to do soon when you get your master's degree? Not me, but you. What you going to do when you get your master's degree? Move right into a white neighborhood. Half the adults in here live in a white neighborhood. Take a survey. We love white folks. Can't get enough of them. So when I get my degree, I'm moving into a suburb. Oh, I want to raise my kids in a nice neighborhood. Neighborhoods ain't something you move to. Neighborhoods are something you build. You don't believe me? What's going on in Baltimore right now? White folks moving in, building nice neighborhoods in your ghetto because you don't want to put your money into your people. We hate investing in ourselves. In Philadelphia, where I live, what are they doing? Cleaning out the black folks out of North Philadelphia, building million-dollar mansions where public housing once stood. You could have done the same thing. They're doing it in D.C. I was in Durham, North Carolina last week. They're doing it there. I was in Brooklyn. They're doing it there. Wherever you go, moving black folks out the hood and creating beautiful neighborhoods where poverty once existed. Why can't you do that? Because you refuse to invest in yourself. And I'm hoping I motivate one of you young folks in here, several of you, to understand that the task at hand is for you to rebuild the black community. For most of our history in America, the church has been the center of the black community. For most of our history in America, the church has been the center of the black community. And I have no problem with your religion. Let me be clear, I'm a descendant of AME preachers. Many of my Pan-African heroes were AME preachers. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, the first black man to say God was black, was an AME pastor. Elijah Muhammad went to his school as a child. That's where Elijah Muhammad learned black God. Garvey borrowed it from him. He was a man of the church. But see, that's when the black church was a revolutionary institution. That's when the black church was about agitation. And now in the Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson era, black church is about accommodation. We don't want to demand. We don't want to fight no war. We want to build relationships with our oppressor. Let's have a cup of tea. How you going to get something having a cup of tea? The black church is one of the most parasitic organizations in the world. You heard me. I ain't talking about your religion. I'm talking about the political behavior of your religious institution. How much money do we get a black church every Sunday? Over $14 million a week. $14 million a week. $14 million a week. And we ain't got schools for black kids. We ain't got hospitals for our elders. We got homeless black folks. Can I ask you a question? When the last time you seen a homeless Chinese? Can I ask you a question? When the last time you seen a homeless East Indian? Can I ask you a question? When's the last time you seen a homeless European Jew? Because those communities take care of their own. Homeless black person, you'll walk right past them. That's another problem we got. We think we all have opportunities in this world. You better get over that. Black people don't all have opportunities. You can't have oppression and opportunities together. Let me just say this. You can't have it both ways. Either there's oppression in America or there's opportunities for black folks in America. Which one is it? Because you can't have oppression and opportunity. See, what you fail to realize is that the power structure will let some of you graduates from Bowie State, they will let some of you ascend to success in positions of influence. We'll give you one president, we'll give you a DA, we'll give you a Supreme Court justice, we'll make you a superintendent of Baltimore schools, we'll put you in charge of the health department, you'll be chief of police, we're going to put you in the fire department. We'll take some blacks and put them in a privileged position, but the rest of you are destined to poverty for the rest of your life. And then you know what they do? They're hoping that the bourgeoisie blacks that get the jobs and the titles, They're hoping that you don't tell the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is that although Dr. Umar Johnson got 6 degrees from 3 different institutions, the fact that I've never been in jail, that I'm self-employed and I do quite well for myself. My father was in a house. My parents were married for a part of my childhood. But that's not the everyday experience for every black male. And it would be selfish for Dr. Umar Johnson to walk to any prison in Maryland and tell them, brothers, it's your fault you're in here. It's easy to say that when you're saying it from a privileged position. Sometimes I wish educated black folks would just keep their mouth shut if you can't say something about the rest of us that's positive. I made it so we all can make it. That's a lie. You don't understand that the science of tokenism is the science of letting a few blacks make it so you can justify why the rest did not. You can't have every black person failing because then the racism is obvious. If every black kid at the University of Maryland did not get a master's or a doctorate degree, it would be obvious that it's systematic racism. So how do you fight against the illusion? You let a few get their degree so you can say, well, we have 2 or 3 who made it. What's the excuse for the rest of you guys? And what are the rules of racism, young people? Because y'all need to know them. You ain't going to believe them until it's too late because you're multicultural and you have a white Jesus complex. But the rules of racism are 3. Y'all need to learn it right now with Bowie. Before you get 30, before you get 40, before you get 50. You probably have parents and grandparents who still don't understand racism yet either because they got a white Jesus complex and a multicultural consciousness. First rule of racism is what? All white people are racist. Every last one. I didn't say that they were bad people. I didn't say they hate you. I said that they were racist. Well, what do you mean, Dr. Johnson? They don't hate me, but they're racist. Racism has nothing to do with attitude. Racism has nothing to do with emotion. Racism has nothing to do with hatred. Racism is a mature, it is a logical, psychological position that is based on 2 things that have nothing to do with anger, hate. And what are the 2 things upon which racism is built? Privilege and power. Let me say it again. Privilege and power. That means you can have a white roommate, you can have white friends, white boyfriends, white girlfriends, whatever you want to have. But at the end of the day, they are committed to the best interests of their in-group. And they are committed to that interest at the expense of your in-group. There is no white person in American history who has ever fought to eliminate white privilege. If there was one, can you please say the name now? I'll say it again. Can you give me the name of a white person who has ever fought to eliminate white privilege? You can give me names of white people who fought against slavery. You can give me names of white people who fought against black poverty. You can give me the names of white people who fought against police brutality. You can give me the names of white folks who fought to improve black housing. You can give me the names of white folk who fought to help integrate the public schools. You can give me the names of white folks who fought to reduce unemployment, but I didn't ask you for that. I asked you for the names of white folk who have fought to eliminate the privilege that they enjoy vis-a-vis your oppression. Is there a name? We've been here 400 years. Surely you must have a name for me. You don't have a name. And for the white folks in the room, I'm not castigating you. I'm just educating my own community because they need to know this. See, what you don't understand about racism is racism confuses its victims by participating in struggles that you consider to be worthwhile, but at the same time, the struggles that they participate never levels the